To introduce myself, my name is Seth Wetchler. I will be sort of serving as facilitator of this conversation, but I'm definitely not leading this conversation. We all are together. And yeah, just as a quick introduction, so I do some community organizing with Care Not Cages, which is a local grassroots community organizing group, for those who don't know, working on issues surrounding the criminal legal system. I'm also a IU staff member, and I've been a resident of Bloomington, Monroe County since 2009. So a little bit about sort of what today's going to look like. Really, it's going to be sort of up to us to decide collectively. Have sort of prepared a basic idea. The sort of main portion of this will be kind of looking at where I think a lot of the conversation has been starting to flow in these conversations about what community justice looks like. That's sort of like what the name of this event was, and thinking about the many, many different ways that we can conceive of community justice in a very broad sense of that term. So that's going to be something I think that hopefully we'll be able to have a really great conversation about. I think we have a good sized group here, but I think we're few enough. If we want, we can sort of do a quick go around of just so that everybody can get to sort of know each other. We can just do, if people would like to, you can pass if you're not comfortable with this, but just do your name, and if you have an affiliation that you'd like to share, you're welcome to do so. We can start down here in the front if you'd like to.
Nicole Siegel, I teach at IU, and I'm with Care Not Cages. What? Say your name.
Anna.
Good. You want to say anything else?
Well, what?
That's okay. It's good.
Thank you.
My name is Kay Weinberg. I grew up in town, and I've been helping out with Care Not Cages.
My name is Cole Nelson. I'm a IU graduate student and loosely affiliated with Care Not Cages.
I'm Lee Grunhafer. I'm a resident of Monroe County and loosely affiliated with Care Not Cages.
My name is Kaisa Goodman. I'm the Public Engagement Director for the City of Bloomington. My name is April Wilson. I work at the Monroe County Prosecutor's Office.
Hi, my name is Nate. I live in Bloomington. I'm loosely affiliated with Care Not Cages and more strongly affiliated with DSA.
Thanks.
I'm Isabel Piedmont Smith, Bloomington City Council and NAACP.
Bob Althauser. I'm not affiliated with anything at the moment.
Great.
I'm Julie Hardesty, member of the Monroe County Women's Commission.
Peggy Cantrell, and I came here through the UU Church.
Jennifer Crossley, Monroe County Council, District 4. Kate Wilkes, Monroe County Council.
Peter Iverson, I'm affiliated with them.
You're lucky.
I think so too.
I'm Martin, I'm from Indianapolis, and I'm with Focus Reentry Initiative, an abolitionist prison reentry program.
Thanks for driving all the way down.
Yeah.
I'm Mary Getzi, local citizen. I've done volunteering in the jail at the Hope for Prisoner Task Force at the UU Church.
Debbie Fish, and I didn't know I had to use terms like loosely and tightly. But I go to some of the Care Not Cages meetings, and I'm connected with them, and also chair the Hope for Prisoners Task Force at UU.
Oh, I'm Terry Lawrence, and I've been a resident of Bloomington since 1974. And I went to high school and college here too.
My name is Jordan. I am the director of Community Life.
I'm Sarah. I'm a community member.
Kyle Gibbons, Monroe County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Mayor.
Go ahead, you were next. Sorry. Joe Varga, IU faculty, formerly with New League, and a bunch of other organizations. Prison abolition.
My name is Rick Marte. I'm the county sheriff.
Matt Demings, assistant jail commander.
And I'm JB, I'm for Black Lives Matter Bloomington, as well as People's Market and a few other organizations in town.
Would anybody else like to introduce themselves? Cool. Awesome. So yeah, thanks everybody for being here. It's really encouraging to see so many different folks at this meeting and from so many different places spanning across city, county, and community. I part of what we were talking about in sort of preparing for this is a proposed goal, and every single step of this conversation is going to be intentionally as democratic as possible. So everything that I say is just a starting point. But one of the things we talked about was, as a goal, being to build bridges across city, county, and community, and have every person leave here with something that they feel that they can do to help in these causes, big or small. So I just want to sort of open it up and see if people want to tweak that, mess with that, throw it out, start something new. Like, what are our thoughts about that as a goal for this conversation?
Can you read it one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So build bridges across city, county, and community, and have every person be able to leave here with something that they feel they can do to help, big or small. I'm seeing thumbs up here. It sounds great. Does anybody have anything they would like to tweak to that? Add, subtract, multiply?
So,
Yeah, Nicole.
I've heard several people say that they want to continue the conversation that has been happening in other venues.
Do we have a consensus to sort of incorporate, continue the conversation into today's goal? Cool, awesome. So we'll use that as a framework for this entire conversation. Also put together some suggested community agreements as we talk, because these are tough issues to talk about. There's a lot of emotion going on here. There's a lot of varying opinions. So here's what we have, and again, I'm going to say it over and over again. These are suggestions. We can tweak the ones we've got. If we feel strongly, we can throw some out. We can also add to this list. What we've got to start is together we know. So it's nobody knows everything, but together we know a lot. Staying curious. Showing mutual respect. We all have very different perspectives in this room, and so treat everybody else's perspective as you would want them to treat yours. One mic, one voice at a time. So if somebody's speaking, please give them the respect to let them finish, and then we'll take turns. Be brief, share the air, which is a similar one. Speak from your own experience, encouraging folks to use I statements instead of generalizations. And this one is pretty specific to this meeting. We cannot solve these problems in 90 minutes, and that's okay. That we do not need to walk out of here and say, all right, criminal justice, criminal legal system, taken care of. Like, that is not going to happen, and we can lean into that. This is a conversation in a many faceted, many pointed conversation. So is there anything that anybody would like to add? I can grab the marker, and we can keep building this list. Cool. Awesome. I'm hearing consensus in the room on this list. If at any point in the conversation anything comes up that you'd like to adjust, add, please just speak up. I want this to be a very open conversation. So, moving next. So yeah, one of the things in planning this we were talking about was in this goal of building bridges. There's a lot of actually work already happening in these areas in our community right now. And so thought it would be really nice to go around the room, and for anybody who has something they'd like to report back, work that they've been doing in this area, either professionally, in activism, in just their community life, personal life, anything that's going on so that people can know what is already happening. So we can just sort of popcorn it out if anybody wants to share what sort of things has been happening in our community surrounding these issues. Yeah?
I just wondered how many people know how many deaths there have been in custody inside our jail in the past few years, during the last administration, for instance. I wondered if that was something that, I wondered why I haven't heard about it on the radio or on television or on the newspaper or from my county council people or commissioners or city council people or the mayor. Seems like nobody knows that we've had 5 deaths in custody, or how these people died, and what kind of investigation was done. I was a founder of New Leaf, New Life, and I worked inside the jail for over 15 years. We made the recovery program and the volunteer program in the jail, we made them work. After our recovery program was canceled, is when these deaths happen. 4 of them are supposedly suicides. They're the first suicides to ever happen in the Monroe County Jail. And yet my fellow citizens and my elected officials don't seem to know anything about it. And I know that the judges have to know because they have one less client. I know the public defender has to know because they have one less client. I know the prosecutor has to know for that reason. And I know this county attorney has to know because there might be a lawsuit. So that group of Democrats is somehow not cooperating and just spreading this information because people dying in the jail. If it was an IU student, it would be national news. But instead, these are just cutters kids. So I'd like to lay that out there as, wonder why as a community we're completely ignorant.
Yeah, so thanks. So spreading awareness about the fact that there have been these deaths in our correctional facility.
Well, and the fact that our media doesn't cover it.
Yeah.
And the fact that our elected officials don't mention it and don't know about it. What the fuck?
So I can do one that kind of follow up to that in a way.
Yeah, so just to summarize really quickly. So yeah, so spreading awareness about that issue. Thank you for doing that work. Yeah, we can popcorn over to Kay.
So one of the things Care Not Cages has been doing is having some private meetings with healthcare providers in town, specifically like people, healthcare workers in town who have been working either directly or peripherally with the criminal justice system specifically. And there's been some meetings and a sort of slow attempt. We're all kind of busy and they're busy, but there's been a slow attempt to sort of build a series of recommendations based on those conversations. And it's just a handful of people, so it shouldn't be considered like some definitive thing, but I think it's really interesting what people have come up with. And so I just wanted to share it. I wasn't actually part of those conversations, but I was just volunteered to pass along the notes. And so this is like specifically a section around next steps and where we think like, and I'm gonna say we because I think these are good proposals, so I'm gonna include myself in this, where we should be focusing energy and financial resources moving forward as a community. And the first, I just wanted to follow Mark because the first thing is increasing transparency and accountability regarding jail statistics, health, and recovery program connected to the jail. So that would look like jail statistics and raw data. It's very difficult to get more than basic information about what's happening inside of the jail. And a public-facing dashboard is something that's been discussed but hasn't been moved on. And a publicly accessible record of funding pathways that clearly shows how much money is going toward which programs, and then most importantly, what kind of impacts that's having. So what kind of financial resources are going to, for example, recovery programs, and then what are the health results for those people, which means tracking them even once they leave the jail and seeing if these programs are working, which programs are working. And I think that just general health information from people inside the jail, I think is also would go into this. The impact of treatment programs broadly. And I mean, this is not just inside of the jail, but just it's important for us to understand like the funding that we're putting into treatment programs in our community and how successful that's been. So looking at ongoing follow-up, career and job outlooks, housing stability, and then like continued involvement with the carceral system. And I'll just read the thing. It says, in order to effectively assess the success and impact of treatment programs, measurements must extend beyond recidivism rates. It's essential to have a clear understanding of which programs are actually helping individuals. Okay, I'm halfway done. I won't take forever. So the first part is increasing transparency and accountability regarding recovery programming connected to the jail. And then the second part is long-term investment in bolstering a community-based continuum of care separate from the carceral system. And there's two major proposals here. One is a long-term treatment facility, which is something people have been talking about for a while now. And so I'll just read. The call for a long-term treatment facility to accommodate individuals with mental illness, substance use disorders, and other related conditions is unanimous. Equally clear is the need for this facility to be disconnected from the carceral system. And the second part of long-term investment is the continuum of care. And this is a vision for a relational network that offers a web of care from multiple organizations. And Yeah, I don't know. I was talking with Jordan from New Leaf New Life before this about this. I don't know if they want to like explain a little more what this is. It's something about kind of making sure that people don't fall through the cracks and that social service agencies are able to like pass people off to each other and work together to make sure that people are taken care of, and also I think for the community to identify gaps, housing being an obvious one, but other gaps, long-term treatment center being another obvious gap, but like big gaps in the support. I don't know if you have anything to add.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing about all that really great work of getting those folks working in the healthcare industry together. Would anybody else like to sort of take a moment to discuss what things they've been doing to work in this area? Yeah, I actually see Jordan from New Leaf New Life.
So we've been able to get back into the jail for Friday morning classes that are helping folks focus on reentry planning. So we have like a workbook that was actually designed by someone that's currently in prison to help with reentry efforts. If anyone's interested in volunteering to lead one of those classes, feel free to chat with me after this, and we can, get background checks and stuff submitted. Those are pretty fun. And still, writing with folks through in-house mail, trying to provide resources while they're incarcerated and after they're released. And we recently got a second grant from Bloomington Downtown Outreach to provide funds for housing for folks. So if folks are, soon to be released and they don't have anywhere to go, trying to prevent them from being released to homelessness. So we've had a lot of success helping folks apply to transitional housing and being able to cover the deposit and first month rent for that. So over the past year, I think we've helped house 62 people. So if you guys are working with folks and you see that being a need, please send them to us.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else? Yeah.
I can just tell you a little bit about what County Council has been looking at, which is we're working on kind of the details around having a committee that is that will be advisory, similar to the CJRC that was suspended, but focusing on investment and where we should be investing the taxpayers' dollars and what our options are for funding. And I'm glad to hear some of these, like the recommendations that Kay was talking about, because I think that's exactly the type of thing that we should be looking at now, in addition to what other things might be going on in terms of facilities. But I really appreciate hearing that. I think what we've talked about a little bit is having our advisory committee do listening sessions on either topical or related to the various parts of the community who might have expertise that we could learn from.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Anybody else? Yeah, in the back.
So I'm going to put on two different hats. So People's Market hat, this is a little different than some of the direct work with people in the jail systems, but it applies. So one of the key things that People's Market is doing is trying to address food insecurity and therefore poverty, right? And we are, this year we have a great deal of funds to help farmers boost their yield this year, and which means that farmers will need farm hands and work on their property this year. So anyone who is coming out of prisons and jail systems who are looking for jobs to do, especially seasonal work over the summer and into the fall, spring, summer, and into the fall, please contact us, because we can hook you up with a lot of different farmers who, through our funding, get paid to pay workers. In particular, Black and brown workers and indigenous workers are our focus as a part of our anti-racist intersectional work that we do. The other component of that, anyone who is freshly out of jails and prisons in our community, and anyone, actually, literally anyone, is entitled to request sponsored boxes from People's Market. And if you request sponsors boxes from People's Market, it's about $85 worth of free food you can get every single week from People's Market. All you have to do is request it. You can either get it delivered to your home, address, whatever, or come pick it up from us and learn a little bit more about what we do. Shop from other vendors for other things. That includes veggies, that includes meat, dairy, it includes bread and eggs. So your basic staples, every single week, completely 100% for free. And so we'll work with any organization that is intersectional in its anti-racism and is focused on helping people in the community, get out of food insecurity. So that's a crucial point in all of this, no matter what we're talking about, to help people not repeat offend, to help people get back on their feet, but also to keep them, fed and secure is a big part of what we do with People's Market. So I can talk to you more about that later. I'm going to take off that hat and put on my Black Lives Matter hat, and just say that one of the key things that BLM does every election year is we put out a voter's guide. And we just recently published that voter's guide and is out and available for you. One of the key questions in our voter's guide to people who are running for office is about how they're going to deal with criminal justice in our community. And one of the questions says, imagine a world without prisons. What does that world look like? So many of our local politicians fail that question on a regular basis because they have no imagination, because they have no ability to think about a world without prisons. Because immediately they go to, well, what about the murderers and the axe murderers and the serial killers and all of this stuff? And they don't think about the majority of people who are in the jail and prison systems, are people who are in need of harm reduction, or people who are in need of mental health services. And in fact, we have someone who's running for office in this room right now who chose not even to fill out the Black Lives Matter voters guide, to not even spend the time putting in to figure out that question at all. And it is so crucial that we hold anyone who is running for office accountable to the marginalized people within our community. Black Lives Matter specifically serves marginalized people in our community. We don't just serve black people. We serve black and brown people, indigenous people. We serve LGBTQ people. We serve all the intersections of black identity, which infiltrates all walks of life. And our voter's guide definitely does have an impact on what's happening in our community. And we want it to have an even larger impact because we want elected officials who are willing to work with us on issues like whether we should have a new jail or not. What happens to jail reform? What happens in our community? And we find that when politicians don't even want to interact on those questions in a real and meaningful way with marginalized people, they are most likely going to choose the worst option when it comes to voting, when they're on city councils or county councils or what have you. So I urge you all to check out the voter's guide and look at the in-depth questions. So we have two versions. There's a short form version, which is you can take to the polls tomorrow and use that to vote. We have a long form version where you can read the candidates' answers for yourself and sort through things a little bit for yourself. Our assessment is based on whether they agree with black and brown ideology from the Black Lives Matter perspective. And it should be very clear that we are an abolitionist organization, that we do not believe that policing and prisons are a necessary evil in our world and community, but that we also understand that they're here right now, and we have to figure out how to move us towards the world we want to see, rather than stay stagnant and wring our hands and say, what can I do? Which is what the current mayoral administration would like to do, and other mayoral candidates would suggest to do, as well as city council members have said multiple times, given the fact that they increased the police budget in our community by $1.2 million. And we haven't seen that an increase in education or increase in housing or increase in all of these other areas. Food justice in particular. So we would rather incarcerate rather than feed. And I think that speaks to the kind of community that we have rather than the kind of community that we say that we want. So find us on Facebook. We're also on Instagram, and you can go to Black Lives Matter Bloomington. You can Google it really easily and find the voter's guide. Please share it with other people, because this election is crucial in making sure that we have people in office like our counselors here down here who have been fighting against the jail. We need that on the city council too, because we need to look at other ways to figure out the problems in our community. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. We're wearing both of those hats. Yeah, Peter.
Thank you, Seth. We were able to go into the jail on Friday with members of the Substance Use Disorder Advisory Commission. That was a group of about 13 or 14 individuals that represented public health and different recovery alliances. And so we were able to talk about all sorts of issues relating to overdose deaths and drug use and intersectionality with the judicial system. But then also, interesting things about whether or not the health contract with the jail covers hepatitis C testing or treatment. And so it was a really productive conversation, and we were happy to see that the B Square bulletin was able to cover that, so you can read an account of that too.
Thank you. Thanks for doing the work, and thanks for sharing. Anybody else? Yeah, Isabel.
I'm part of a subcommittee with the NAACP where we are closely following the Community Justice Reform Commission, well, we were before it was suspended. And you may remember that Maquiba Reese, our branch president, made a statement a few weeks ago. So we're really concerned about a certain lack of respect that's been shown by leaders of that commission, especially towards the elected representatives of color, and the lack of transparency and real community engagement of that group. So we're paying close attention to that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Jennifer.
I was just going to say, not to recap or rehash the word suspension or anything like that. I feel like we're all in the principal's office right now. So I think for us and for me personally, like, and using and trying to reference what Jada was saying too, like wearing different hats. Like for myself, county council hat is, in these meetings, I've always been very vocal and honest and wanted to make sure that we are hearing from our community members, despite, some people, folks having difference of opinions. And I will say, and I said this before, that I'm thankful for community members to come in to speak to us and to have words with us in dialogue. In particular, that's how I've gotten to know you better, and a lot of other folks here in this room, because I think I had one way of thinking of what it would look like, and then how often we've had these meetings, I really have taken home a lot of things that folks have been saying and paying attention and trying to listen, because I think as we as elected sometimes do too much talking and a little less listening. So that's definitely something that I've been trying to practice what I preach and trying to do. And now that we are in this lull mode, I think for us, and for me in particular, it is how can we keep this community conversation going, and whatever county council decides to do, hopefully community will be a branch of that. And I say hopefully, but I say that in a way because I do feel like we are there. And it's because of a lot of folks in this room picking and prodding and flicking at some of us on the committee that we really feel comfortable, because in December, that's where for me, I started to feel comfortable with being uncomfortable and saying the hard parts out loud, and I will continue to do that as long as I can stay in my seat. So there's that. And also just trying to know that what I don't know is what I don't know, and I can't stay ignorant to that anymore. And so Jordan reminded me that I need to get in contact with her because I totally forgot. But we have been I've been trying to get in touch with her because I know of New Leaf, New Life, but I want to know the ebbs and flows. Because what is it on county side that we can do? Because oftentimes we hear that we can do things right now, but what the hell are we doing? Because we're not doing anything right now. We're sitting here looking at this person and that person and this person, and then we all go home and hope for another 2 weeks that we'll all be better and poop just hits the fan. So that, and just trying to educate myself about New Leaf, New Life, Courage to Change. I've been in contact with them, and hopefully we'll have a meeting with them soon. But taking off my county council hat and taking off on my community, I as a black woman who has a mom, I'm a wife, you know, raising kids in this community, this is something that is very near and dear. I have family members that have suffered from substance use, family members that have been incarcerated, that's still incarcerated. So all of this hits home for me, so this is a lot. So I think for me, there's a lot of work that I have been doing on my county council side and as a personal side, so yeah.
Thank you for sharing that work and for sharing those intersectionalities in your life. Thanks for that vulnerability. Anybody else like to share other things that they're working on? Would you like to share? Yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
This follows well, I think, from Jennifer's suggestions that, and yours also, Seth, that there are already a lot of things going on in the community that I think are extremely helpful and that are moving in the right direction. And one thing that Care Not Cages would like to do, I think, is help bring those together in a way that articulates a clear path and, you know, maybe even one that could prevent us from having to build a new jail. But it is, so in terms of thinking through what that might be, we've begun to brainstorm what will be the Care Not Cages counter-proposal to the proposal to build a new jail. And that involves everything that could help reduce the rate of incarceration in Monroe County. Because our idea is that if we were to take advantage of all the opportunities that we can see and fund, Kate, to diminish the local population, it would release the pressure on the jail so much that there would be programming space, there would be, you know, the ability to renovate parts of it that could perhaps be temporarily closed while people were housed in another part of it, and that, you know, we could take it down to the absolute minimum so that it would do the absolute minimum amount of harm that it can do. And so here are the categories that are in the counter proposal. Transportation, based on the understanding that people sometimes need rides or coordination in order to show up at appointments that otherwise might get them violated or otherwise incarcerated. Procedural and administrative practice, lots of things about holds, autonomous legal clinics when we ship people to other counties, things like that. Changes in police practice, which the mayor can help with. If we were, for example, to not have cops do traffic stops, but have traffic stops be allocated to some other body that we could create. And the handcuff policy or use of handcuffs. Changes in probation policy and practice. All the anti-poverty programs, including that basket of food sounds amazing, but also funds to compensate people for lost wages or help people not lose their apartments or jobs when they're incarcerated. Mental health and addiction services, all the things we've been talking about. And then autonomous projects that involve building the kinds of things that people need outside of carceral frameworks, including crisis management teams. This includes things like mini libraries and community gardens and things like that. I mean, anything autonomous that can be imagined that gives people what they need not to end up in jail. One of the ways that we're thinking about framing this is as a very broad effort to reduce the jail population. So pretty much all of the things that you guys have brought up, including, and lots of other things that you haven't brought up, would effectively reduce the jail population, including improving the conditions in the jail, because as some of you in this room have pointed out, when the jail conditions are slightly better, it helps people get out and stay out.
Thanks for sharing all of that work. I've seen a couple people trickle in just to sort of give you an update where we're at. we are doing some report backs so that everybody in this room, and hopefully with the CATS recording and from word of mouth, everybody can know what everybody's already doing. Some really incredible work has already been shared. And so actually to piggyback off of what Nicole said, if anybody is interested, I don't want to put him on the spot, speaking of jail conditions, would anybody from the Sheriff's Department like to say about the work they've been doing?
Because you guys have been doing awesome work.
I'm sorry?
Because you guys have been doing awesome work.
Thank you, thank you. One of the reasons why we're just staying quiet and listening, we want to really hear what the public thoughts and what they want from your sheriff department. And we are trying to move as fast as we can. I understand the different perspective of the group. One of the things that we noticed right away is that if you want a person to do better, you have to have an environment that they can do better, and we understand that. We get that. But what I am going to ask is a slight patience, and the reason why is this, and I get the understanding that we need to provide a lot of assistance to people that need it where they're at the given time, and believe us, we want to do those things. We'll continue to do the things to the best of our abilities. But when we say to you that we have no space, we have no space. Now, I'll take a little further. Any of you that want to take me on my offer, I will personally give you a tour and show you what I'm referring to. It's not that I don't want to show you, I will. Transparency, one of the things that we all are going to continue to do. And if there's a doubt, I have no problem sitting with anyone and having a discussion. Even before I became sheriff, whoever reached out to me, I made it a point to sit down with them. I personally made it a point to reach out to people. Some people said, yes, I'll meet with you. Some people said no. So be it. But I do understand as far as you treat people very humanely and try to give them all the possibilities to better themselves. We get that. So as far as the jail progress, we're progressing. It's cleaner than it was before. There's more light in there. There's more programs coming in. There are programs that were stopped before that now are back into the system. We are trying to think outside the box, or if someone comes up to us and say, hey, have you thought about this? We'll discuss it. But now keep in mind that we cannot add to it without the space. The topic of a new jail is very sensitive, very, very passionate. I get it. We need to have the conversation. I want people to try to see it from another lens. When we say we need a new jail, we're not saying we want to put my bodies in there. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is we want the capability of treating someone in a more humane place, because there is a time where a particular facility outlives its usefulness. And when we say remodel, there are certain things you cannot remodel. When I say to you that when we try to actually buy parts or find a part to elevate that facility for the betterment of people that are residents are in there, and they don't make those parts anymore, we have an issue. So when we say a new jail, that's what we're referring to for us. Now, as far as the beds and the number, the citizens have to decide that part. We give you our opinion because this is what we do, but we do not want to put more people in there. We do not want it. In fact, we want less people in there. That's what we want. However, at the same time, we have to be able to reach people where they're at. And if we don't have the capability of doing that at this point, then we're going back again to the same situation where the people that come in, I might see them again when they leave, because when they are released, they're going right back to the same environment where they came from. This is where we need your help, because I'm really enjoying and soaking in what you're saying. Now, as a matter of fact, how do we connect all the dots? How do we all work together that when I pick up the phone, or my staff pick up the phone and say, hey, New Leaf, New Life, or Care Not Cages, we need your help with this individual. How do we help this person? Because if you can help us make sure that that individual doesn't come back to us in our system, that is great. That's a win-win. That's what we want. That's what we want. So we're intentionally staying quiet because we want to hear, okay? We want to learn. And this is a great start for us, because one of the things that we want to do, we haven't had a chance yet. It's been about 4 months, 5 months now for us, ending our 4th, beginning our 5th, is to have this dialogue with the public so we can hear what needs to be said. I understand we're not going to agree on anything, but my goal is this, that each one of us walk away from this meeting with a better understanding of where we stand and our vision. Because without this, there's no way we can move forward. And we're willing to do that. We're willing to listen and move forward.
experience and your perspective on all that. Yeah. Anybody else who would like to share some work that's been happening? Yeah, Deb.
I have a question about how and when the city and the county will start being able to work together. Does anyone want to take that up? Kate? I mean, seriously.
After this election cycle, maybe. Some folks need to get moved on.
It is our intent to be very inclusive with the committee that we want to put together, and that specifically does mean inviting city representatives to the table. So, in specific to that issue, that's in a couple weeks. I mean, that's what my goal is. But I also, I mean, we do work together on a lot of things. I think it gets very overplayed. Yeah, that we don't, that we don't.
Because at CJRC, it was like that could never be a part of it until Pete at least asked them.
And then I ruined the whole thing. It was my fault.
Asked them if they wanted to come up, and two people did. I mean, that was a wonderful start, but, and maybe it is happening more than we know, but that's where we visually could see or couldn't
Absolutely,
see it.
yeah.
So when you see this new group that you're thinking of pulling together, do you have to pay attention to, like the whole city council can't be there, or, you know what I mean? Can it just be a few?
Yeah, it has to, yeah. And that's where, I mean, just, we're still working through what we can do and still be effective and still be nimble and recognizing that we really need information, and we'd like to get information quickly. And we'd like to turn that information into decisions that are informed and useful and support what the commissioners are doing, as well as what the community needs. And that's where I think we may be looking more at specific listening sessions, and then also bringing people, to a group. We're still hammering it out, so I don't have a lot of specifics on it, but certainly it will have, we won't want to silence any voices, but at the same time, we do have to not have a table so big that we lose the information from those voices. So it's a balance,
And I know, Kaiser, I know you wanted to.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the question, Deb. I just wanted to chime in and say I do feel like we are working together already. So I mean, we've all been at the CJSC meetings where I've said every time that I wish we could have a seat at the table. And I feel like the elephant in the room is we know who wasn't allowing that. But one thing that has been a positive for me personally and professionally that's come out of this has been the folks who have worked together really closely on this, the county council colleagues, and the folks in the prosecutor's office and the public defender and the sheriff's office. And so we are in communication. Like I mentioned at the last CJSC meeting, we were planning a trip to tour the Thompson site. We did do that. It was myself and a couple of colleagues from the city, and a couple of county council members, and Jeff Cockle and some folks from the sheriff's office. And aside from, honestly, we didn't walk around that much. It was more just a good chance for us to have a conversation. And I am really optimistic about the new fiscal subcommittee, because I appreciate the fact that folks on the county council realize that obviously the city has both a logistical factor, right? Like the police are the biggest user group for the jail. We also, most of the population of the counties in the city, but also have a moral obligation. That's something I believe, that's something the mayor believes, is that we have a moral obligation to look at a community justice reform, and not just the jail facility, but also what we're doing, right now, like we keep saying, in terms of, funding and collaboration. And so I would echo what Kate said. I think that the whole concept of city and county not working together does get overplayed. Staff and people work together all the time on a number of issues. And that's not to say it's never contentious, but I was joking, I was like, I think someone's gonna find out we all like each other. Like, we actually get along, we basically want the same thing. And in terms of, I think, what I've been doing overall with this is I've been trying to listen, and this is something that I care about really passionately personally, and I'm fortunate I've been able to get to be involved in it professionally. But I think that from the city's perspective, it's about, you know, looking at what our priorities are as a community, what are we putting funding in, who are we bringing to the table, and really sort of agitating for at least an equal amount of money to be spent on services and prevention as the new jail, at least as much. And that's, you know, that's our perspective as a city.
Yeah, so thanks for sharing that, and I'll continue just a minute, Nicole, but I just want to say, I think that that conversation is actually going to be a really good sort of segue from this conversation to sort of where we're at, slash where we've been, into our next sort of portion of this event, which is sort of where we want to go towards. So Nicole, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I just wanted to say that I've now heard several groups talk about having overarching sort of coalitional committees. The one that your guys are talking about creating, the one that the NAACP is talking about creating, and then the Care Not Cage's vision of the jail reduction effort. And I would love to see those three groups, even though I think they probably should be separate formally. They do have slightly different makeup, goals, procedures, but they should be working in awareness of each other, and ideally in collaboration and conversation with each other. Maybe there could be representatives of each at the other table, or occasional meetings where all three come together, or whatever model would work. But I love seeing that we're all trying to expand out and create these sort of larger vision groups, and let's also keep those larger vision groups working together.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet, yeah, Jennifer.
I was just gonna say real quick, I don't mean to, I feel like I'm full of puns today. It's all the coffee and anticipation for tomorrow. So I think just to kind of go off of that, yes, everybody has a role, from activists to electeds to community members. And so I dare to say, you know, a while back we were all kind of told to stay in our lanes. But, you know, honestly, that might have been a blessing in disguise. We might not know that this little hiatus has brought us together and has really ignited a lot of things, because we all can agree that maybe it wasn't working the way that we thought it should. And this little breakup right now allowed us, or should, and currently allowing us to kind of, you know, intersect in our lanes, so to speak, and try to figure out how we can work together. Because I think that's the biggest issue with a lot of things in Bloomington, that everybody has this particular lane, and it's like, don't come over here because I'm doing this over here, and you're over here, and you're over here, and you're over here. But what I hear is, I think we all have similar things and goals. I might have a different way of going about it than a person in this particular way, but we all care about community, so how can we make that our common focal point and go towards that? So I do wish that, you know, even with this and the conversations that we have, that our intersection of lanes can blend together and create an even playing field for all.
For sure.
I'd like to second what my sister Jen is saying, that there are a lot of different groups working desperately and separately within our community. How many of the organizations that are here tonight, people representing organizations are here tonight, have no affiliation with the city or the county and receive no monies from the city or county? How many of you? Few? Okay. Yeah. So what would happen if the organizations who do have county money, city money, the organizations who don't have county money and city money, received full funding from the county and city in order to achieve some of these goals? We could move some of this progress down the road, because what I got to tell you, I'm sitting here and listening, and I keep hearing everybody say, we're collecting data, we're doing a study, we're going to have a conversation. And I love it. Great. We should have a conversation. We should have some studies. And I know y'all white people love studies and data. But we're getting into this next part of the conversation. What is the action plan? What are we going to do? Because in the meantime, as the sheriff says, that there's an overcrowding problem, as the conditions are bad. In the meantime, there are people suffering. It's one of the reasons why BLM does the things that we do, is because we're trying to address immediate need as opposed to spending time hitting our head against the wall, and trying to just kick it down the road. And so much of politics and so much of government is about the bureaucracy around it. And so what would be great is if those who are elected officials in this room could help us cut through the bureaucracy. And a lot of times, finances cuts through the bureaucracy. And if we can raise the budget for the police, we can surely raise the budget to take care of individuals who are in need in our community. And again, for the police, I know y'all think that, you know, we don't like the police. The reality is that we think that there are things you don't need to be doing, and that because there are community organizations who are much more capable of doing it, and it's an undue stress on you that you don't need. So if we can put that into other elements of our society, then we can segregate a little bit more of what you're doing and reduce harm all the way around for you and for other people in our community. That's where the defund movement for the police comes from. It doesn't necessarily come from, we hate all cops or whatever. It comes from, this is a body of government, of governance and law enforcement that is not suited for some of the things that they are forced to do through the way that our society functions. And so let's remove those things from you so that you don't have to deal with it anymore, and give it to organizations that are more capable of dealing with it, and giving it to people who are in fields of psychology, who are in fields of sociology, who are in fields of harm reduction, who are in fields of social services. And so that police aren't even at that call, so they're not in the system, so they can't get to the jail. We just circumvent that. One of the ways that BLM have been talking about doing this for, I don't know, I think it's 6, maybe 8 years now, you probably know, has been a 311 number that we call instead of an emergency number for things like people ODing, for things like people having mental health crises. We've been talking about this for a really long time, and in fact, a lot of the things that Care Not Cages brought up earlier are platforms in which BLM has been talking about for a number of years now. And in fact, in 2020, when the march for George Floyd happened in Bloomington, we were actively having conversations about all of those issues on a daily basis, and nothing was done. No activity was happened other than raising the police budget. And so for me, when I hear we're going to continue conversations, I'm like, great, okay, let's continue a conversation. But when are we going to start taking all the data that already exists, by the way? Any study we can do on our current jail, it has already been done and replicated in any other city around the country, and we can just extrapolate. We are intelligent enough. There's a university over there. I believe there are smart people who can help us. We can extrapolate that data into action plans and put them into place, instead of taking all of the time up for another study. Why not take the data that already exists and do some action plans on it?
And so I think in service of that, it sounds like we're already sort of organically moving towards sort of the next section of this conversation. But yeah, I want to really quickly just sort of like say a couple of thoughts and emotions about what we've sort of been talking about. It was really great. Some of the things that were discussed are activities that I knew about, and some of them were things that I'd never heard of. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. I didn't even know that that was going on in our community. And I heard a lot of murmurs in the room. I think every single thing, I heard some people being like, whoa, that's happening, and that's really cool. And I think we are already well on our way towards building those bridges between all of our sort of groups and affiliations and peoples and all of that. So I'm really encouraged by that. And so, yeah, so in service of this conversation of like, okay, what's next? What can we do? What sort of actions can we take? So the next portion of sort of this conversation And I'm having to remind myself of community agreement number 7, because we are unbelievably already at 5:30, and we're going till 6 today. So we're going to take about 12 minutes for each half of this conversation, and we're going to all give ourselves the grace that we're going to want to talk for 120 minutes on each half of this, not 12. But so the idea was to try to think about, right, what does community justice look like? And trying to think about ways to fuse ideology and practice. So both thinking about dreams and how to make those dreams a reality. So in the first half, I want to really encourage folks to just think about what do we want, what are our goals. Don't worry about how we're going to make it happen. Don't worry about whether it's possible or not. Just like, right, similar to like the question on the BLM, like, what's a world without prisons? Like, right, just dream big. And then in the second half, we'll talk about how we get there. What actions, big and small, can we take to either achieve those goals or at least move towards those goals? So I'm going to really quickly just take a picture to document this. I'm going to erase it. Or I guess I'll put it to the room. Do we want to sort of do this on a board, or we just want to keep it sort of like conversationally, and that might slow us down? What do we think? Board. Are you hearing board? Okay, I'm hearing board. Cool. Okay. So one thing that I heard was the 311. So like a non-police sort of crisis line. Is that, am I understanding?
No, 311 is a non-emergent number that you call for basically just health issues, overdoses, so emergencies that may be medical emergencies, but they don't need to involve the police.
Okay, so non-police emergency line.
Yeah.
And possibly something that's not run through the same police dispatch
100%.
line, so you can't just like hit a button and send it.
It would have to be separate from the police dispatch.
Yeah. So non.
Yeah, and I'm just going to capture broad strokes on the board here, and we're all having this conversation. We're all listening to the details involved. So what are the things when we envision community justice, like what falls under that very large umbrella?
BLM works with a community justice organization, or sorry, a community security organization. I can't think of the word I'm thinking of right now that helps us assess dangers at our events, and that includes whether individuals, black and brown individuals, are being targeted by police or whether they're being targeted by white supremacists, etc. And they're just community members who help walk the perimeters of events and talk to us and communicate with us. And so it's the community engagement that we're looking for. So people who are just regular folks who are trained in medic training, street medic training.
Would it be a fair abstraction to sort of take that one sort of level up to say just folks feeling safe in their community? Like regardless.
Generic, but sure, yeah.
Yeah. Just sort of clarify, Brad, I'm thinking about like these sort of broad, like big picture, like, you know, so like if we think about it, what does community justice look like? Community justice looks like people feeling safe / not feeling afraid.
Is there a way to split the difference and go somewhere in between?
Yeah, absolutely.
Less abstract, but not so specific to BLM. I don't know how.
Well, but it's a community organization that can work for anybody, so that's why I brought it up.
Oh, yeah.
It's something that already exists in our community.
So maybe folks feeling safe and then not necessarily tied to policing as a solution to that.
Like community guardians versus community policing.
What did you say up there? I didn't hear you.
I said it sounds kind of like community guardians versus community policing, like kind of community members having each other's backs, and it's people that you know and that care about you.
I'm not spelling that word right. I'm just going to keep moving.
People trained in that medic training as well is key. Harm reduction services as well as medic training.
De-escalation as well.
De-escalation, maybe that's the word I'm looking for.
Seth,
Yeah.
do you want me to ride again?
Yes, please.
Because I can't read a word of that.
Thank you.
He had me come up and write the agreements, because I used to be a teacher, and I'm like, oh my gosh, now I know why.
Thank you. Cool. So yeah, so what else when we, yeah, Peter.
I've been hearing a lot about transparency.
Okay.
Yeah. I completely agree with Jada. The data exists and people just don't know about it, don't have access to it. So transparency in a big broad idea is that everyone has access to the same data.
Yeah, so like data transparency.
Can I say no?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I'll just bring April and then back to you.
Comprehensive support for someone when they transition from the jail back into the community. That's something that I would.
Comprehensive reentry support.
Yes, like housing and make sure you connect people to medical providers and mental health and substance quickly when there's pretty vulnerable stage at that moment. And I didn't know about the food. That was really interesting to learn about. All of those things that helps them.
Yeah, and I think those things, right, things like you mentioned, like housing, food security, healthcare security, both in reentry and also before someone has ever come to any, like, right? Community justice is keep people from the sort of incarceration system completely. So both in helping folks reenter and then also helping folks never enter in the first place. And those same things serve both functions. Yeah, I'm going to hop back to Peter and then to you.
An abundance mindset. I'm reading a book right now called Poverty by America. It's written by Matthew Desmond, and he argues that when we say, well, there's no way we can afford that in a public setting, that it's actually like sinful because we are taxing the poor and the rich succeed and all yada 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 yada. And so an abundant mindset is really important.
I'm not sure whether it's maybe Jennifer, Kate, who mentioned courage to change, but I think like more structured, free or very affordable recovery housing. Yeah. But also more just like extremely affordable housing generally. But I think both of those things separately.
The housing first mindset that is already exists with programs like Beacon and places like that are already trying to make that happen.
Yeah, so housing is community justice. What else? Maybe some folks towards the back of the room. Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, I'd like to see a situation of zero tolerance for people experiencing physical and mental health crises spending any time in the local jail, particularly spending 24 hours laying on a fucking tile floor. That's barbaric. It should never happen to anybody. So we should get to a point where nobody experiencing that kind of crisis, and having a blood alcohol level above the legal limit, you're experiencing a crisis. You're sick. You are not doing something bad. You're experiencing a crisis, and you should get proper medical care, whether it's mental or physical care or both, and never spend the night in jail.
Yeah.
Access to comprehensive health care, physical, mental, STD.
Yeah. Healthcare is criminal justice. I mean, yeah. Community justice. Thank you. Sorry, get my words fixed. That didn't sound right when I said it. One of those words is wrong, but I couldn't figure out which. Anybody else? Just sort of popcorning.
I'm going to add some of this emergency line be 24/7. Because I know of an incident recently where they called for the community resource and it was after hours, and it ended up being a very negative experience. So if we're going to have it, we got to have it all the time.
And in fact, there's a section on BLM's website that specifically talks about the 211.
About the what?
211.
Oh.
311.
311.
311.
Did you write 311?
I notice a lot of what I see in the paper and just personally what I've experienced is about domestic violence. And I just wonder if there's a way to have some community resources that address that for free or for people of limited means.
Yeah, so like, resources to provide safety from experiencing domestic violence and security that won't happen in a relationship. Yeah.
And I was thinking about, like, the only help is when you call the police to come and address it, and,
Like the Middle Way House crisis line, for example, right?
Yeah, the crisis line is not fully manned 24/7.
Need more volunteers.
I have a friend who lives in South Bend, and he just took on a new job, but he formed his own company before that called Stone's Echo. And it was a team that he had who would go into a home and help the whole family.
That's
And
what I'm thinking.
yes,
Yeah.
look it up, Stone's Echo, one word, South Bend. It's addressing that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so again, thinking about this conversation of like, right, first we're in this dream section, so right, so what I'm hearing is a dream would be no domestic violence. That just didn't happen if that wasn't a thing. That'd be pretty cool. I saw somebody else, I don't remember where, somebody had a hand up. I think, do you have one?
Yeah. No, I was just going on. I think knowing we need like an inventory of our resources that we know we have, and we're not utilizing them in ways they need or the individuals who need them need.
Yeah. So I mean, that sort of ties into the transparency, but not just transparency, but accessibility.
Yeah, accessibility.
Another thing that BLM had suggested years ago was creating a database of all of our local services that provide all of this, that would be tied to, when you get a welcome to Bloomington, you get a packet that has all the numbers listed. If you get out of jail, you get this packet that has all of the numbers listed, and has a website that connects to all of the websites for all of the social services organizations in town that are not necessarily connected with the government, but are all of them that are available in Bloomington. There's no central database that right, exists in one location. You have to go here to find. Even the city website doesn't have all of them listed.
Yeah.
Some of them listed in there, and that's right, they're different places.
Yeah, yeah, accessibility and to all the resources that are happening.
And templating in order to make that easier for other people who maybe don't have access to computers but have access to them.
For sure. I'm going to add one real fast, and then I'll get to you, Isabel. I mean, I think also part of this, and we're sort of hinting at it, but zero cost barrier to everything, to all of the above. Because, you know, so having that not be a barrier. So, Isabel.
Well, similarly, zero physical barrier for people with disabilities.
For sure.
I was just calculating the other day the amount it cost to incarcerate a person. And when I was volunteering in jail for the entire time, there was a population of 300. At 300, that's over $11 million a year spent on incarceration. Magically, during COVID, that number dropped by 100. That's $4 million somewhere that could be used to help some of these services. And I would also like to encourage the judiciary and knowing how to put pressure on them to keep that number down. Because if it was easy to release that many, then why were they there in the first place? And why are they kept back? And why are they back with recidivism?
Yeah.
So I think we need to look at, I mean, it's such a huge picture, but I don't want anybody building a big jail for numbers of people who don't need to be there, which is exactly what we had before COVID.
Sure. So what I'm hearing is, and I think, you know, and this is I think this is a point in which the sense I've gotten is that there's a lot of different perspectives on this, but I think we're all sort of coalescing on the same goal. So maybe I'm hoping this is a common denominator phrasing of this. I know we're getting a little into semantics, but community justice is the minimal amount, trying to figure out how to phrase it. This is not a perfect phrasing, and I'm admitting that in this moment. But I hope we can all accept what the meaning of this is beyond the words. A minimal amount of folks incarcerated, which can include zero.
And should include things like incarceration, like electronic monitoring, ankle monitors, like the the way the commissioners were talking about secure beds at a treatment facility. Like, we need to make sure we don't end up incarcerating people in other ways.
So,
I had one thing to say, and it goes back to my, just reviewing what has been done in Monroe County with the Stride Center, and like trying to figure out why that is not as helpful as maybe they thought it was going to be, and maybe like what that space or that place could be used for, or maybe other places that could be turned into like these community spaces. So creation of some sort of space for some of these things to happen.
yeah, okay, so like a physical space. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna ask you if you feel comfortable. So like, yeah, thinking about like, okay, right. So I hear you saying that there's some elements of the Stride Center that, in your opinion, have not been working. Can you, if you dream big, what is a similar place that would be just like ideal? Like, what would we call that? We can also to Lee or to anybody in the room.
Well, I think this long-term facility with some sort of short-term emergency facility that's associated with it, so something like that, something where instead of taking them to the jail, they can take them to this place, or people can bring people there and like this team, you know, so very much a place.
Okay, so yeah.
Triage.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, having physical locations for this, and I'm also hearing long-term and short-term solutions to all of the above.
Right.
A resource center that has this like principle of abundance, like Peter was saying.
Right.
Like, a way of actualizing it is like, because it's like we don't want it, like a lot of people don't want to actually have a place where people can just like go and receive care for months. They're like, no, people, life is hard, you know, that shouldn't be a thing, but it's like yeah, I don't know.
And
Like, we don't want to make it too nice because then they'll stay there or something. It's like, you know, that's like a real, I don't know, like.
It's a real balancing act.
Also, think of what you're saying, Kay, right,
Okay,
is that there are no public spaces anymore that you're allowed to exist in long term. We've had a lot of problem with taking our homelessness and taking it out of our public parks. And let's stress that our homeless population are public people as well. They're part of that public. This library is one of the only free places you can exist in, and it closes at a certain time.
So public spaces for all, maybe with the word public underlined.
At all times.
Love it.
That's the key, is that you should be able to be in a public park at 3 a.m. in a tent if you need to be, just the same as you can be there at 3 p.m. And that our police officers and our mayor doesn't kick, and our county doesn't kick people out of the public spaces that belong to them. And then to add to that then is that then there need to be services within those public spaces, like bathroom facilities, trash can facilities, so that we can help keep them clean and neat and proper, right?
So yes, I'm hearing community justice is public spaces for all at all times. Yeah, Isabel.
Just one more thing, going back to the Stride Center, I think one big problem with it is that the referrals go through law enforcement. So this location, this resource center, needs to be totally divorced from law enforcement.
So is the Stride Center then a carceral facility?
No, but it's mainly Bloomington police that bring people there.
Right. And so, yeah, and I think keeping cognizant of time, and community group number 7, we cannot solve all these issues in 90 minutes. So we only have 10 minutes left in our conversation, so I'd like to allocate 5 minutes for, we started to do this again, I think this is a very organic, but starting to sort of then flip this script, and these are these like dreams, and just starting to brainstorm some steps that we can take. I think it's really great to have big steps, small steps, everywhere in between, like actions that we can do to start moving towards this vision of community justice. So we'll take 5 minutes for that, and we'll do a quick wrap up.
Maybe having some more, we used to have a community justice and mediation program in Bloomington. I was on their board for a while, but it kind of dissolved, like a lot of.
We have it.
It's still there. It is still around?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But I think, because I think engaging the community in mediation process would benefit everyone involved.
Yeah, yeah, so community mediation.
I think for me, a quick takeaway, I'm gonna talk to Jada after this about, hopefully helping some folks get jobs. And then I'll probably swing around and talk to you guys about maybe folks that are incarcerated can get bump time if they have to do interviews with those people. So then that way we can have a nice little pipeline for people leaving jail and they already have a job lined up. So that's gonna be a quick takeaway for me. Also, I think I moved here from Martinsville. In Martinsville, you can count the number of nonprofits on one hand about, and then when I arrived in Bloomington, I was blown away at just how many incredible people are doing just really great things, which is awesome. And it's also very difficult because every time I do, a grant meeting and we have to do presentations that are like 5 minutes, I hear of like new organizations, and there's a lot of duplication of services, and you have 40 different nonprofits that have requested $1 million, and the city's like, we have 300,000, duke it out. And it's like, I think it's really important for nonprofits to try and get on the same page and try and not duplicate services and step on each other's toes as much as possible. That's really difficult because after you work all day, especially with people, really the last thing that you want to do is like go to a meeting or hop on a call. I know at New Leaf, there's just 3 of us that do everything. And at the end of the day, we're exhausted. But I think investing time for organizations doing this kind of work to get together and figure out how we can support each other instead of wrestling for the same minimal grant funds would be really helpful.
George, I want to flip that on its ear. I want to say that you're right, possibly we need to pair down and work together and have coalitions, I 100% agree. But what if we weren't fighting over scraps?
Yes, and
That's what I would rather say. Instead of going to the abundance mindset you're talking about, the city has abundance, the county has abundance, even though they don't think they do, they do. And there are ways to create abundance within this American country that we have, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
So instead of us trying to make ourselves smaller, we actually need to make ourselves bigger. And coalition building is great, and we should be doing it, but that abundance mindset means that we should be expanded, that your group should be bigger, my group should be bigger, and we should be working together more. And that the funds are there, they're just being misdirected. So I would just challenge that just a little bit in the friendliest way I can.
100%.
Yeah, I'm saying, yes to both.
Yes, it's a yes and.
Exactly. We're doing improv now.
Yes, yes.
I think I have like 1 or 2 more sort of action ideas. Again, recognizing this is far from a comprehensive list, but like things that they think that we can do to start moving towards these goals.
And we are, like I said, there's already a community defense organization in town. If any of you are interested in learning more about community defense, please talk to me. What that essentially is just helping different groups and organizations function without the need or necessity of police involvement. Our Pride group involves in town. We use community defense all the time. People's Market functions on a community defense basis. We are looking for new community defense members to learn all of the things that I mentioned before. So that community defense is an actionable thing you can do today.
Yeah, and I really like that, and I like, both, I think, speaking to that, to the community defense, and to the other things, to market, BLM, and then everything, right. We already named a lot of things that are happening, so I think one of the things can be get connected with the things that, we don't have to like say, here's something new. There's already a lot of stuff happening, and get connected with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, the 2 of you, and then we'll move to sort of closing.
Go ahead. I really appreciate the sweet and collaborative nature of this conversation. So I'm like reluctant to say this, but I feel that I have to say that like building a jail will tie up some, probably by the end of the phases and all the interest paid off, hundreds of millions of dollars in funding that could be going to these sort of things. So it's just not a both and I think we should need to be I think one way we can accomplish this and create just a huge abundance of funding, would need to like think creatively about how to avoid building a jail that we know will be an expansion of a jail. I know people don't want to say that, but like no one's proposing we build a smaller jail. That's just not on the table. And so I'm just like, not expanding the jail and relocating everything in the Justice Department will make all of this very possible, and building the jail will make a lot of this very impossible.
Do you feel like it's a fair summation for the board to say creative and critical conversations surrounding jail construction?
Okay, thank you. I was
Yeah.
like, how do I write that? What was your first part?
Creative
Okay.
and critical conversations surrounding jail construction. Because I think, and please speak up, I think that sort of, from what I've heard from today, I feel like that captures the room. Cool. Yeah, Kazi.
One thing I would add, to add on to some of the stuff Jada said and some other folks, you know, I think that one thing that is our strength is that we have so many different people with similar but slightly different perspectives and priorities. And I think it's awesome that the county council and county cages and the NAACP are all having these conversations. But what Jada said really resonated with me in the fact that we have spent so long talking about this, and we have spent so long studying it, and it's just literally been decades, and like nobody doubts that we have a problem. And so I feel like for me, like just like my project management, like OCD brain is like, okay, like what are the next steps, and like how are we going to like set a timeline and like real action items, and like make sure that we, like this is the first meeting we've had, no offense to the CJSC, where it's felt like really productive, because I feel like at the other meetings we spent all the time talking about the structure of the CJSC, but we also can't have these meetings every 2 weeks for the next year and just like talk about stuff, right? Like I feel like really figuring out like, okay, who's doing what, and how do we bring people to the table but not make it totally unwieldy and also not duplicate efforts. I don't have the answer to that, but that's a priority for my community.
Yeah, I like that, and I think that really brings this, like, right, I think an action item can be timeline. It can also just be, an action item is action. I'm hearing that in a lot of people, and it can be action now. And all of these people, and I expect there's gonna be a lot of conversation after we wrap up this meeting, a lot of little people breaking off and doing exactly that. So, right, an action is action, with the sort of like implied piece of that being, you know, conversation is also still important. We're gonna have to talk every single step of the way, but also walking that walk. Isabel, and then we'll close.
So I would prefer to focus on building that resource center that we talked about. And, you know, let's focus our money and our time and our effort on that. And I'm happy to, you know, I think city and county should talk funding. You know, budget time is coming up. Let's put money towards that and then see what the need is for jail beds. You know, let's build the other things first, the preventative things.
Yeah, so I'm hearing action item is both sort of two piece, fund allocation, right? An action can be allocate the funds for the things that we want to see, and also specifically a resource center that is not a jail, that can help folks avoid incarceration in the first place, and then also avoid re-entry into that, avoid going back to the jail if they are re-entering the community. I know, again, community agreement number 7, we cannot solve this all in 90 minutes. We've got only a couple minutes left. So I want to start by saying, I want to revisit our goal for this conversation. Our goal was, and someone said, I know we added a piece, and I don't remember it exactly, so I'll need help. But what I've written is, we were going to build bridges across city, county, and community. And we're going to have every person in this room leave here with something that they feel that they can do to help, big or small. Can someone please remind me of the piece that we added?
Continue the conversation.
And continue the conversation. Do we feel like we have achieved that goal today?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm seeing some sort of. I'm seeing some yeses. That is a positive trend, at least. I'm not hearing any blanket no's. I would love to hear them if they are out there. I think that's an important piece of this. We have at least, at minimum, moved in that direction. We have oriented ourselves that way. So I just want to thank you all for being here. The last sort of piece on this is, so right, so this is a meeting that was really birthed out of the CJRC being sort of like suddenly suspended. This was sort of intentionally held in that same time slot, since many of us have blocked off our calendars every other Monday at 4:30 anyway. So this can be a conversation, and this can be a conversation we have now. It can be a conversation we have sort of in a couple of times. I'll get to you in 1 second, Deb. Would we like to continue these conversations with this room and more people who can come next time or something? I mean, this can be a one-off and we can all go and do our things, or do we want to try to have this collection of folks continue to meet in some sort of timeline? I don't know if it's every other week, I don't know if it's monthly. Those details we can hash out, but I want to get a temperature check for if people want to continue to have these sorts of conversations with these folks in this room.
Now, so the subgroup of the NAACP has rooms upstairs for up to 40 people reserved for the next time the CJRC would meet. We've already got that room reserved, and we just want, I think you and I are on that committee, we just want to make sure people keep talking, and one of our goals was to be able to be real advocates and apply pressure where needed. But I just want you to know we have that space. I think it's for the same time frame as right now.
It is.
Yeah.
What would really be great though is that if all of the groups who are here together could actually start like parceling out our, in that meeting time period, be like, how are we doing that work together?
Right.
What is it, what are the next steps for us to partner fully and get that done? How do we create working agreements among each other to figure out how we're gonna continue to grow and work together? And how we're incorporating intersectional anti-racism into everything that is on the bill.
For sure, and I just want to share one quick thing, and then I will get to you in just 1 second. Right, sort of share a little bit of behind the curtain of how Karen Cages organizes, and this does not have to be a model that is blanketly applied, but at meetings, we have working groups that meet outside of meeting times, and then at each meeting, it's a report back. And so we put a report back here, and we haven't had an opportunity in this group to sort of all build together and work together. Maybe at the next one, we could say, oh, hey, we talked about meeting up after the meeting and talking about actions. Let's see what happens. So that could be a good piece of it. I like that. Yes?
I'm just wondering if this is a way to start the resource center. Like this is the space that we have with this time is the resource center getting started, getting off the ground.
And the other rooms are much better for us sitting and seeing each other and
We tried to book meetings room. We tried to book a meeting room,
Yeah.
but not an auditorium. It was already booked for today.
This was it.
Yeah, cool. So I want to, out of respect to time, I'm hearing that at least some people in this room would like to continue to meet, and I hear that we've already got 2 Mondays from now, which can anybody remember?
15th.
The 15th at 4:30. So it sounds like, am I correct that this conversation can continue at that time?
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. And so yeah, so I think we can plan on that. We can also get the word out for folks who may not be able to make it or may have not heard about this, and we can continue to have these really powerful conversations. I also just want to say for myself really quickly, I want to thank you all because I don't know if you can tell, my legs were jelly up here, and I know I stumbled on some words sometimes, and I want to thank you for giving me the grace when I was stumbling on my words. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody coming here with just really great compassion for each other. I think this was a very powerful conversation we had today. So.
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you.